Truth in a post-truth world, unearned wisdom. In today's fast-paced world, media prioritizes politics, profit, and pleasing audiences over truth. This shift traces back to a decline from early 20th century investigative journalism to today's sensational, biased reporting. During the early days of modern journalism, reporters like Upton, Sinclair, and Tarbell paved the way for investigative journalism that challenged the status quo. Sinclair's The Jungle offered a stark exposé of the meatpacking industry, leading to regulatory reforms. The mission was clear: hold power to account and provide the citizenry with the information they need to make informed decisions. These were days when the Fourth Estate was considered a fundamental pillar of democracy, and newsrooms were often less concerned with profit margins than with their civic duties. The media landscape changed with the advent of broadcast journalism. Mid-20th century TV, exemplified by Edward R. Murrow, mixed responsible reporting with entertainment to keep viewers. Murrow's exposé on Senator Joseph McCarthy showcased media's influence, but also exposed its susceptibility to political pressure. By the time the internet conquered the global stage in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the media had been completely metamorphosed. Not only did the business model change, becoming dependent on clicks and views, but the fragmentation of audiences also intensified, leading to echo chambers. News outlets became increasingly partisan, catering to specific demographics rather than pursuing unbiased reporting. Rupert Murdoch's media empire, with its unabashed conservative leanings, exemplifies how media can be molded to serve specific political agendas. The audience, too, has changed. The proliferation of platforms means news is now in perpetual competition with an endless array of distractions, from social media feeds to streaming services. Our mental bandwidth, drained by the exigencies of modern work, is now a scarce resource. In this ecosystem, outlets like Netflix and social media platforms capitalize on human psychology, offering facile, entertaining content that demands little cognitive engagement. This environment, teeming with distractions, further disincentivizes a collective pursuit of truth. The adage that knowledge is power seems to have been replaced by a more cynical understanding. Keeping people hungry, busy, distracted, stupid, and fearful ensures a status quo that benefits those in power. Whereas once media could have served as a corrective force, championing enlightenment and civic engagement, it has often become a tool for maintaining existing power structures. The media doesn't just disseminate information, it shapes perceptions, drawing borders around what is socially acceptable and what is not. Here, the media is less a neutral platform and more an active player, sowing seeds of disquiet and division. The role of media in creating taboos can be traced back to its intimate relationship with power structures. When reporters, whistleblowers, or any truth-tellers challenge the societal status quo, they often face severe reprisals, not just from governments or corporations, but from the media itself. The media, aligned more closely with maintaining the current state of affairs than with pioneering social change, can punish these transgressors through character assassination, selective reporting, or even outright censorship. Comedian George Carlin, a raconteur as insightful as he was irreverent, encapsulated this sentiment in one of his iconic skits. Carlin reminded us that the people who have historically attempted to change civilization's status quo for the better, figures like Jesus, Gandhi, and Martin Luther King Jr., were not lauded during their lifetimes, but instead were assassinated. They weren't interested in following the program, Carlin noted wryly, underlining how those who challenge the system often face extreme consequences. This punitive approach towards nonconformity serves multiple purposes. First, it sends a chilling message to any who might attempt to challenge existing norms. Second, the spectacle of the punishment itself becomes another media product, ripe for consumption, often eclipsing the transformative ideas the individual may have been advocating. The punitive treatment of nonconformity in media is a multifaceted mechanism, a symphony orchestrated with intent and producing consequences both overt and insidious. At its surface, the chastisement of those who challenge prevailing norms serves as a glaring billboard of warning. It's akin to the medieval practice of placing heads on spikes at the city gates, A gruesome reminder to all entering that deviation from established laws will be met with extreme prejudice. In more contemporary terms, it resembles the modern practice of cancel culture, where the targeted individual becomes a cautionary tale, their name forever tarnished. In both scenarios, the act of punishment transforms into a spectacle, a form of public theater that captivates audiences and deflects attention away from the substantive issues at play. Think of the McCarthy hearings of the 1950s, where the spectacle of public shaming overshadowed genuine discussions about civil liberties. Or consider the high-profile legal cases against whistleblowers like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange. Their personal lives, legal battles, and moral choices become the center of media circus, obfuscating the critical issues of mass surveillance and freedom of information they initially sought to highlight. Furthermore, this spectacle is not just a byproduct of the punitive action. It is often a deliberate strategy. The media channels its energies into creating an engrossing narrative around the individual, at times elevating them to near-mythical proportions. Once this occurs, the person becomes a media product in themselves, ripe for consumption in the form of news segments, think pieces, and social media discussion. The controversy surrounding Colin Kaepernick's kneeling during the national anthem is a case in point. What began as a protest against racial inequality morphed into a never-ending media circus, discussing patriotism, the military, and even the NFL's bottom line, often at the expense of the original issue of racial injustice. What we observe, then, is a twofold utility in the media's punitive approach to nonconformity. First, it silences would-be challengers through the dark art of public humiliation, an unspoken yet palpable threat that dissuades future dissent. Second, it commercializes the very act of punishment, converting it into a consumable product that entertains while it obfuscates. The individual, once a herald of transformative ideas, is reduced to a caricature, their message lost in the cacophony of public debate and media sensationalism. And so, the wheel turns, with the media both dictating and capitalizing on the boundaries of societal norms, all while the essence of critical issues fades into the ever-expanding fog of collective amnesia. The nexus between taboo creation and media's evolving role is an intricate struggle between society's existing prejudices and the economic and political imperatives driving media. These taboos aren't mere byproducts of media reporting. They are often carefully cultivated narratives that serve particular interests. In a landscape where George Orwell's admonition that, in times of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act, rings ever truer, understanding the media's role in creating and perpetuating taboos is imperative. As Marshall McLuhan forewarned, the medium is the message. And in today's world, the medium often wields its formidable influence not to enlighten, but to obfuscate, divide, and suppress. Engaging in this narrative, media not only abandons its role as a truth-teller, but also weakens the foundations of an informed democracy. We're left facing the unsettling fact that media, once a beacon of truth, now often dims it. When truth's gatekeeper is unreliable, we face a deep epistemological crisis. If we can't trust our information sources, how do we separate fact from fiction in diverse issues like pandemics, UFOs, or economics? This isn't just an information crisis. It shakes our faith and forces us to question the very basis of knowledge. Descartes, the father of modern philosophy, posited cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am, as an indubitable premise, a foundation upon which to build a system of beliefs. In our media-saturated age, however, even the act of thinking is influenced by external information, which often comes tainted with bias and untruth. If Descartes were alive today, he might find himself in a labyrinth of manipulated realities, questioning not just what he knows, but the very mechanism by which he knows it. The ancient Greeks believed in the concept of aletheia, an unfolding of truth where concealment and disclosure are two sides of the same coin. Today, this unfolding is manipulated, the scales tipped towards concealment rather than disclosure. The profound implication is that the pursuit of truth becomes not just a search, but also a constant act of unmasking, of peeling away layers of distortions to reveal the core reality. In psychology, the concept of unmasking has played a pivotal role in our understanding of the human psyche. Sigmund Freud's work on uncovering the unconscious mind can be seen as an inaugural voyage into the deep recesses of psychological truth. Like the Greek concept of aletheia, Freud's psychoanalytic theory proposed that hidden forces, repressed memories, subconscious desires, steer our behavior, often unbeknownst to us. To arrive at a fuller understanding of oneself, a process of unmasking these hidden layers through techniques like dream analysis and free association, was essential. Similarly, Carl Jung's work on archetypes and the collective unconscious sought to unveil shared psychic structures, suggesting that truth resides not only in personal revelation, but also in tapping into universally shared myths and narratives. These pioneers in psychology recognized that individuals often unknowingly wear masks of social conformity, of self-deception, that conceal deeper truths. Fast forward to the present, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and mindfulness practices continue this tradition, focusing on unmasking cognitive distortions and emotional reactions to expose a more objective reality. In each of these instances, psychology honors the practice of peeling back layers to uncover a more authentic self, or truth. This trend of unmasking in psychology echoes the current discourse on media manipulation. Just as psychologists emphasize the need to uncover hidden aspects of the mind, the modern quest for truth in a world of media obfuscation demands a similar approach. As we sift through the cacophony of headlines, clickbait, and politically charged narratives, the act of unmasking becomes a form of intellectual hygiene. In both realms, the pursuit of truth necessitates the difficult labor of distinguishing between what is presented at the surface and what resides underneath, making the journey both an investigative and introspective endeavor. Thus, whether we're talking about psychological self-discovery or the discernment of truth in media, the idea of unmasking serves as a guiding principle. It underscores the realization that truth is neither fixed nor transparent, but a layered construct that requires continuous effort to reveal. Both fields advocate for a rigorous, relentless examination of the hidden, making the process of unmasking a central act in our pursuit of knowledge and understanding. In the complex maze of today's media, Nietzsche's words that there are no facts, only interpretations, become our unnerving compass. Consider the tangled debate over climate change. Despite overwhelming scientific agreement, interpretations of this truth fracture along lines of politics, economics, and even faith. Thus, the fact of climate change morphs into a battleground of conflicting worldviews. Similarly, the phenomenon of fake news muddies the waters between objective reality and ideological spin. The 2016 U.S. presidential election exemplified this, with narratives crafted less from unbiased policy analysis than from selective interpretations of events and statements. A single truth fractured into many, turning us all into reluctant critics, compelled to sift through a quagmire of conflicting truths. These complexities extend to societal debates over race, gender, and immigration. Here, data and incidents don't merely represent facts, they transform into symbols, heavy with cultural, historical, and emotional resonance. Discussions range from police brutality to gender pay gaps, and the truth remains far from settled. Instead, it is continually contested, debated, and reshaped through individual and collective lenses. In this landscape, democratic societies face a profound challenge. If truth becomes a construct of shared interpretations, it calls for an engaged citizenry, not just passive information consumers, but active participants in shaping and critiquing this information. Our civic responsibility, then, isn't just to absorb, but to scrutinize, to become dialecticians, engaging in discourse to unearth the nuanced layers of interpretation that color our world. The crisis in the Middle East and the Russia-Ukraine conflict further illuminate this Nietzschean dilemma, where the truth emerges as a chameleon-like construct, influenced by a myriad of perspectives. In the Middle East, geopolitical complexities make the quest for objective reporting a Sisyphean task. Conflicting narratives, be they from Western powers, local governments, or radical organizations, vie for prominence. Events like the Syrian civil war or the Israeli-Palestinian conflict don't just yield a single fact. Instead, they produce a tapestry of interpretations, each colored by ideology, religious sentiment, and historical context. Similarly, the Russia-Ukraine war presents an intricate mosaic of truths. In Western media, the narrative often focuses on Russia's aggression and Ukraine's struggle for sovereignty. Russian media, meanwhile, frames it as a necessary action against a fascist Ukrainian government or a defense of ethnic Russians in Ukraine. In each case, the war is not merely a set of objective occurrences. It becomes a complex narrative that serves different geopolitical aims. The writings of philosopher Michel Foucault on power-knowledge interplay become particularly relevant here. Foucault argued that power structures legitimize certain forms of knowledge while delegitimizing others. The media, acting as a conduit of these structures, projects what is acceptable truth. To break free from this cycle, one must engage in independent research, critical thinking, and cross-referencing across multiple sources. Truth becomes something you must fight to uncover, a dialectic struggle against an omnipresent tide of misinformation. In grappling with such existential uncertainties, one is reminded of Albert Camus' Myth of Sisyphus, where the hero is condemned to push a boulder uphill only for it to roll back down, forcing him to start over. The search for truth in a post-truth world resembles Sisyphus's endless toil. It is ceaseless, often futile but necessary for affirming one's existence and agency in a chaotic world.